Mac here with you on Birds 365. We are joined by our buddy Andrew Dicecco from InsideTheBirds.com and the Inside the Birds podcast, who was down there at Lincoln Financial Field last night. Did you actually see anyone nod off during the playing of the game? Did you see any?
No,
to the left, fade to the right.
The reason why that would never be possible, Jody, is because I sit next to Jeff Kerr and he doesn't stop talking.
Oh man,
that's true.
That's do you actually? It's a good thing you don't pay for the seat, but you could have filed for a refund if you got to sit next to Kerr during the game.
I need that. I need to sit next to John. And, John's the voice of reason there.
But you can get bowling tips from Jeff Kerr, though, so just take advantage of it. Yeah,
take advantage
of it. All right, we'll start with what we're talking about, Andrew. On a scale to 0 to, oh, my God, where are you with Marcus Mariota as the backup quarterback of this team?
Well, going into yesterday, John, I thought it was sort of an overreaction. You wanted to see. I always said, let's see what happens in game 2. Yeah. But coming at it was very apparent early on that he just doesn't have it. And if last season was any indication, his skills were waning. I never thought I'd say that Gardner Minshew would be a better option. But, I mean, when you look at what they had last season, I think that you'd rather take Gardner Minshew than Marcus Mariota. If you needed a quarterback to step in and play a game, get you through a game, get you through multiple games, I don't know that Marcus Mariota has proven that he can do that. It kind of my whole theory about him being new into a franchise and getting a handful of snaps and having a day off and having a handful of snaps then having the day off. Well, Tanner McKee's been able to transition just fine. So I think it's more of a byproduct of Marcus Mariota being on the tail end of his career and not having a whole lot left.
All right, so then let's jettison ahead to Thursday night, a week from last night. Last exhibition game against the Colts. You get your joint practices during the week. And I know that could affect the way Thursday night is handled, but how much does Mariota play? If you truly believe he's the backup, unquestioned, he's the veteran, he's been there, done that. Tanner McKee, no experience. We're not going to him if Hurts goes down. Do you put him out there, or do you put the deference tag on him and not play him? How is Sirianni going to handle his quarterbacks on Thursday against the Colts?
Well, even given the reps that I saw him get on Tuesday, I was kind of surprised to see him play as long as he did, Jody, to be honest with you, the other last night. Mm-hmm. I thought you'd see a heavy dose of Tanner McKee and also some Ian Book sprinkled in. All that being said, I would really be surprised if you see Marcus Mariota play next week, especially if you're taking what Nick Sirianni said yesterday at face value. Ian Book didn't take a single snap, didn't see any work in the joint practices. I think that those last preseason games are they're for guys just like Ian Book to sort of take those snaps, utilize it as film to take to other teams and showcase what you're able to do. I would be surprised if Marcus Mariota is your 2. I don't know that you would see him on next Thursday.
Boy, I forgot about Ian. Boy, next Thursday is not going to be fun.
That might be 4 hours.
Yeah. Hopefully there aren't as many injuries, and that was a concern. I mean, let's be honest, the Eagles don't care about winning these games, lose, draw, as it was, but to get 6 injuries, and it certainly looked like Zach McPherson was a significant one, and if it turns out to be that, they just lost their best 2 special teams players back-to-back weeks. And this was not a very good special teams team. Is that an underrated concern of yours for this Eagles team?
Oh, absolutely. That's not something that's going to garner headlines, and it kind of gets lost in the shuffle when you're watching a game, John. But special teams, these are core members that you obviously lost Sean Bradley for the season with an Achilles injury. We'll see about Zach McPherson, but those are 2 guys that were sort of the nucleus, I guess you could say, for that unit. So depending on the severity of McPherson's injury, that's a lot more crucial than what it appears to be on the surface. Provides inside-outside versatility at corner, one of the top young gunners in the NFL. And
now he's returning punts.
Punt returner. Yeah. And I thought he was really starting to come into his own, looked a lot more comfortable when you put him on the inside, which is where I thought he fit best coming out of the draft. It was a shame. He made a nice play. He came down awkwardly, and it did not look good.
All right, speaking of punting, Ty Zentner,
Oh, yeah.
Did he hit a good one all night? For me, he was 0 for 5. That's not good. You got 5 punts, and he had a chance to boom at least one. Open some eyes with one. He did he have any ball travel 50 yards?
Well, depending on who you asked, Jody, he was already on the 53-man roster before training camp even happened. Yeah. But Aaron Siposs was always the incumbent, and he was always going to have to do a lot to unseat Siposs. And I think that last night really solidified that Aaron's going to remain going into next season.
Or TBD. But I know Aaron Siposs might be the Eagles punter. TBD might be the Eagles punter. Ty Zettner will not be the Eagles punter. That's what I'm going down that route. Although, yeah, I will give this 39.8 net average, which is terrible in this era of the NFL, but 38.8 net. So he's kicking it short, but no returns. I guess you can give him that if you want to say things in a positive direction.
I guess if you're looking for a silver lining, if you're Ty Zettner, you could kind of bring that to an interview and have that on a resume.
They did not bring one back to the house.
Yeah,
there was absolutely no touchdown scored on any of the Eagles punts. If that's going to decide the job, it's not. So be it for Ty Zettner.
Yeah, so many of these, by the way, Andrew, so many of these competition battles that we thought we were going to see, we haven't seen. Cam Jurgens at right guard with Tyler Steen. Nothing. No competition.
Wait, hold on. Oh, wait. I got to jump in here for either you two guys. Did Nick Sirianni even dare to say last night that the right guard position hasn't been decided yet after the game? He didn't go there, did he?
No. He wasn't even asked because everybody knows now. And again,
see, I would have asked him just to pimp him. Because he refuses to answer the question when it's obvious, as beef jerky is standing there in civvies on the sideline. Yeah. Oh, we still haven't decided who the right guard is. Please.
I always tell you, Jody, it's very competitive. You can't waste the question. If you waste the question, you're gone, man.
You're right.
Out the door.
You're right. I know where you come from. You're right.
Now, John, one thing I noticed this morning, I wanted to hear your input on this. Given that 2 crucial members of Michael Clay's unit are down right now, Ben Van Sumer, the linebacker, led the team with 24 special team snaps. Yeah. Mekhi Garner's played a lot on that unit as well. Do you think either of those guys have a realistic opportunity to kind of seize one of those spots now that maybe we're on the outside looking in?
I think Mekhi, I mentioned that last week because people were excited about Eli Ricks making the pick 6. And I said, hey, you know what? Mekhi Garner making a play on special teams, especially when Sean Bradley got hurt, was a bigger deal for the Eagles because they're going to have to replace a core special teamer. So, yeah, I mean, those 2 injuries opened the door for a host of players, Ben being one of them because he's very athletic. And that translates, maybe it'll take a while at linebacker, but that translates well to special teams. So, yeah, that opens the door for a bunch of guys. But Mekhi seems to be a good special teams player. Ben seems to be a good special teams player. I haven't seen that from players like Ricks and if you want to go even Mario Goodrich or somebody like that. But I think Goodrich has played well in the slot. So, but they need special teams players. And it's not sexy. Nobody likes to talk about it, but they need guys who can cover kicks.
Yeah, Tyree Cleveland actually is a big
Tyree's
loss
good at it. Yeah,
because he could have been a gunner for you, and he's played a ton of snaps with the Broncos, and he was viewed as a core special teamer. So
yeah, I'm glad you brought him up. And I think that's going to be not a long-term injury. So I think Tyree, I'm glad you brought him up because he's a good special teams player, and that will certainly help him make the roster. And now there's a little bit more room than there was before. So, yeah, good point, Andrew.
they've I thought that the roster construction from last night got more muddled than defined, because the young cornerbacks that we all see flashes of and kind of like, who they gonna have in the practice squad, who they got to cut, none of them really jumped out. Zach was the only one, and oh, by the way, he looked bad early. He got 2 passes completed on him early and then turned it around and started playing real well. None of those guys jumped up as must-have DBs and or special teams contributor for me last night. For you, Andrew?
Not particularly. That was actually a point of emphasis for me yesterday, Jody, to focus on the young defensive backs.
Right.
I really like what I've seen from Mario Goodrich from a slot perspective. He was on the opening kickoff for whatever that's worth. I think right now the door is ajar for him to potentially get one of those spots. But I mean, Eli Ricks struggled in coverage yesterday. He fell down on a 32-yard touchdown to Austin Watkins. I think Mekhi Garner. Ringo had a really rough game, John. Yeah. So, like, to me, I don't even know. I mean, I don't think that he can step in and give you snaps at all in the at least early in the regular season.
No, yeah.
So he's a long ways to go. Mekhi Garner has flashed. I just don't know where his future lies. Is he going to be a safety? He kind of reminds me a little bit of even, I don't know whether it's the number or his size, of a young Kaiser White, because Kaiser White was a converted safety. I just, there's a number of young guys, but nobody really stepped up. I mean, Zach McPherson and Josh Jobe opened the game as starters, and those guys really had their spots stamped on the roster. But as far as young guys jumping up and really snagging one of those spots, Jody, I didn't really see it.
Would you say that Zach Cunningham, as of right now, and I know, again, when's it going to change? The practice against the Colts, the game against the Colts? Right now, it seems pretty obvious to me that Zach Cunningham should be the other starting linebacker across from Nakobe Dean. Any disagreement?
No. I think that one to me is sort of that's starting to come into focus, right? I think as we get later towards the end of August, I think it's apparent to me, at least, that Zach Cunningham would be the starter right now opposite Nakobe Dean. Long player, physical player, he's logged a ton of snaps in the NFL, gets his hand on a lot of footballs. He has the length to disrupt the passing lanes, and you've seen it already. He's gotten his hand up. John knows he's affected. He pretty much was the reason why Reed Blankenship got the interception the other day, which led to the little melee in practice. But I think that he's just the type of player that kind of reminds me of a TJ Edwards-esque player that the Eagles can have in the second level of that team to sort of solidify that and provide a physical element.
Third tight end has been interesting for me because I expected more from Dan Arnold. We haven't really seen it throughout training camp. I think he had a good spring, but I don't think he's stood out. We finally got to get that Tyree Jackson sort of splash where you see the athleticism and just this physical ability. But I think it's going to be chalk. I think it's going to be Goddard, Stoll, Calcaterra. And you see anything different, Andrew?
Yeah, John, that's kind of how I had it going into camp. I thought that it was going to be between Dan Arnold and Grant Calcaterra ultimately throughout the summer. They both offer next to nothing as a blocker, but they are noted receivers, right? So I think when you look at someone like Dan Arnold, he's a journeyman. I think he's been on 5 or 6 teams. They've invested draft capital. Granted, it was a 6th-round pick in Grant Calcaterra, but I think all things equal, you're going to be partial to the guy you drafted that you have a year of development and invested in and give him the benefit of the doubt and kind of want to see that through. And I think that while no one's really stepped up and really caught my eye, I think that Grant Calcaterra would probably be the 3 right now.
As good as Devontae Smith is, who, oh, by the way, Darius Slay said the other day, could be the best wide receiver in the National Football League at some point in his career. That's pretty high praise. We all watched what A.J. Brown did last year, and if the Eagles don't have him, they don't go to the Super Bowl. The guy on the team with the best hands is still Greg Ward. If you throw it to him, he catches it. Never drops the football. All right, he doesn't break tackles. He doesn't get downfield the way A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith does. But, damn it, every time they throw him the ball, he catches it. Is he going to make the practice squad again? You know, the practice squad is supposed to be for developmental. Well, Ward is what he is. He's not developing, not getting any better, but he is, for me, the best hands on the team. Does that merit him a practice squad spot again this year?
I'm really glad you brought up Greg Ward. I've been a big Greg Ward guy since 2017. I mean, I thought that his transition from quarterback to wide receiver was pretty seamless. He was on the practice squad. He won a Super Bowl ring as a rookie. He does so many things well, Jody. He catches the ball well. He is really good at working the short to intermediate areas, finding the soft spots in zone, taking hits over the middle. He doesn't have the size. He doesn't have the speed, but he's a reliable player. And an underrated aspect of his game is that he is a really good leader. Guys respect him. He leads by example. He's a quiet guy. He does a lot of things that people don't realize. In the practice squad, he was emulating the Niners wide receivers before the NFC Championship game. In the Super Bowl, he was Edelman, he was Amendola, and giving the starters those different looks. And I just think that he's a valuable guy that you would like to have around. And I think you have to carve out a spot for him, because I think he would help any young receiver and just a good guy to have in the building.
Yeah, I mean, tremendous leader. It's kind of amazing the way Greg Ward has developed into this organization. We've talked a lot about the negative play, the poor play. The best part of this Eagles team to me, and there's a lot good. The quarterback is tremendous. The receivers, Jody just talked about at the top end, certainly with AJ and Devontae. The tight end is phenomenal. The starting offensive line is good. A little bit concerned with the depth this year. But that defensive front, man, I mean, and I'm talking edge players and interiors. How many defensive front people are you keeping on this team? Because, I mean, they have like 15 or 16 NFL players.
Yeah, I mean, off the top of my head, maybe 11. Like there's gonna be some really good guys that shake free. I mean, Janaris Robinson, you and I talked about him last night. I spoke to him after the game. I thought he really flashed. Under ordinary circumstances, he probably makes the team at one of those final spots. He's really athletic, 86.25-inch wingspan, Florida State pedigree. They held him on the roster all last season without playing him in any single game. So they obviously like him, John, but there's no room for him.
There's no room.
There's no room. I mean, Moro Ojomo's injury, and we'll have to wait and see what that did not look good. And you feel for the kid, but maybe that opens the door for a Marlon Tuipulotu, who I kind of thought was already on, or maybe Kentavious Street, because before the injury, I didn't think Kentavious Street had a shot, and that's a veteran player that I thought
he played well yesterday.
Right. So that right there tells you how deep they are, and I just think that there's going to be some NFL caliber players that don't make it and end up somewhere else, and maybe provide some snaps.
All right, last one for me, Andrew, and this is going to be difficult. A who says no question. Howie Roseman, Andrew Berry. Whoever puts the call in, one calls the other, and the offer is Austin Watkins for Quez Watkins. Who says no?
Andrew Berry.
Andrew says no after the big Austin Watkins showing last
night.
Well,
here's the thing. He's a young player.
Got a ton of traffic, by the way. How many targets did he? 14 targets.
They just kept throwing him the football.
He's a young player, Jody, and I think sometimes that there's an allure there, and he's moldable. So he might not have some of those bad habits.
Well, see, now you screwed the pooch.
You're talking about elite.
I was going to give you a free pass on that one, but now I got to put you to the test. Tell me where else Mr. Watkins has played. Since you don't know, I'll tell you. 49ers, Tampa Bay,
awesome.
The Memphis Showboats, the Birmingham Stallions, and the Ottawa Rough Riders, or Saskatchewan Rough Riders, excuse me. This guy's been all over the world. He's not that old. He's
I guess
young.
You need a
young or is he old? I don't know. He's played for like 72 different teams, including the Blazers of UAB. That high-level college football talent that he was.
He's 25, by the way.
Well, and here's the thing. I mean, Quez is missing valuable time right now. There's no way around that. The Eagles obviously really like Quez. They've Nick Sirianni has doubled down on his support for Quez throughout the offseason. But at the same time, I mean, when you already had a tentative footing on the depth chart, I mean, I think he's gonna be on the roster.
But I'm in the category, Andrew, where Quez is getting too much crap because Well, two things. I'm just looking up Austin Watkins. So Jody pointed out the fact that, he's been around for 2 years and he's already got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 organizations on his resume. He ran a 4.53. Howie's the one hanging up that bone. Anytime you can run. Now, Quez put himself in the hot water for calling himself elite. That's absurd. But, I mean, he's an NFL receiver. He had a bad year, but I think people are too harsh on Quez Watkins. And I think he's got a chip on his shoulder. As long as he's not going to get a lot of traffic. And by the way, he played through an injury last year, which people didn't know about as well. As long as he makes the plays that are there, he didn't make them last year, and he deserves to be criticized for it because he was out there, injury or not, he was out there. And if you're out there, you got to make the plays, certainly in the Super Bowl. I don't think he's a terrible player. Am I crazy with Quez?
No, but I think that he's kind of unfairly come under the microscope because they've been really effusive in their praise of Quez, but then Quez didn't help himself by, like you said, calling himself elite. So I think when you do that, you put yourself under the microscope and you leave little room for error there. But I mean, come on, John. Austin Watkins beat the great Eli Ricks for 32 yards.
That's true.
Are you still sure?
Yeah, I forgot about that. You got to put that because, Eli Ricks was he was getting a gold jacket from some fans.
And he just Watkins just sashay around them into the end zone, man.
Yeah.
Hey,
it's a good point.
Watkins may not make the Browns. Kaylee Ringo's going to make the Eagles, and last night it was who's going to grab the football. At least Watkins knew where it was. Ringo had no bloody idea on that throw down the sidelines.
And I think it was great. He was on the Saskatchewan Roughriders, the Memphis Showboats, and the Birmingham Stallions. 3 legendary minor league organizations
he's
already.
Been around. But John says they're sticking with Quez because he runs a 4.32 rather than a 4.59.
Oh, they're totally staying with Quez. Austin Watkins would never be the number 3 on this team anyway.
Yeah.
Andrew, great stuff. Appreciate you jumping on board with us. We're going to have you on plenty during the season. Check out all his work at Inside the Eagles, InsideTheBirds.com, both the podcast and their tremendous website. Thanks for jumping in today.
Thanks, Andrew.
Great talking to you guys. Take care.
Hey, Jody, because you sent me down this wormhole, and I know you got to go, but real quick, Austin Watkins is the cousin of Sammy Watkins and Jalen Watkins.
No relation to Quez, though.
No.
Quez is an outsider. He's
outsider.
A Watkins on his own, huh?
Yeah.
All right, so he's got some. They got football in the blood. That's my point. I don't know if that's showing last night. I think Andrew Berry's phone is ringing off the hook. People inquiring about Mr. Watkins. I'd never heard of the guy before last night. I'm going, who? Quez? What? Who the hell is Austin Watkins? But a
lot of traffic last night. A lot of traffic
with both quarterbacks. Even when they changed quarterbacks, they just kept throwing to. It didn't matter who the quarterback was. Throw it to Watkins.
By the way, Cleveland sat far more players than the Eagles. Believe it or not.
Oh yeah.
So,
anyway, I was at least glad to see that they decided to play their middle linebacker because I feared that.
And he made a play. He made a play.
He made a play. Took one penalty, but then made a play on top of it, which, correct me if I'm wrong, John, and I know how big an Edwards fan both you and I are.
Oh, I got that a lot. That N'Kobe forced a fumble and TJ didn't. I got that from a bunch of fans.
Yeah.
I will just remind you again, that was not Nick Chubb. That was John Kelly. If that's Nick Chubb, that ball's not coming out. A good play. I think the more impressive part of the play was his ability to diagnose and knife in there, which would have been a tackle for a loss. But that's a bad fumble. That a big time running back isn't fumbling that football. So.
Understood. But you take it anyway and get your hands on it when you haven't seen N'Kobe do all that much this preseason, and you know that he's going to be their starting middle linebacker. You take a play anyway and get your hands on a play, and he did. Make a play, but you agree. I'm pretty sure that we all agree on Cunningham's job to lose as of right now for the other starting linebacker.
I thought he was great. I thought he played really well and he was even better in the joint practices. So to me, it's between Zach Cunningham and Christian Ellis. I think they distanced themselves from Nick Morrow, and that's a positive. Because I said from the day they signed him, but I was talking about Zach in Houston. He was a very good player. I didn't know how much he had left.
Tennessee gave him a big contract.
Yeah, he was a very good player. Yeah. And looks like he's got something left. That might turn out to be a really solid move for the Eagles.
Last question, and then I got to run. Johnny Mack will come back. He and our buddy Xander will wrap up the show for you. We've been debating all off season about how Sean Desai's defense is going to look compared to Jonathan Gannon's defense. And you say that he is taking his marching orders from the head coach. That's all about the concepts of Nick Sirianni, and don't get too far afield because the coach will be calling you into his office. Last year, they used 2 linebackers. They stayed on the field all season long. A lot of it, of course, has to do with not getting hurt, but they played well. And I bemoan the fact that the now starting middle linebacker got all of 32 snaps last year, and criticized Nick Rallis for not doing a little bit more subbing. You think they want to handle it the same way this year?
I think they want to, yeah. But, when they signed those 2 guys, Jack and Cunningham, I thought, you remember I said they might piecemeal it because I think Zach is the better run defender. Miles is the better pass defender. But Zach is the better run defender and the better pass defender. So, if you don't have to take him off the field, you don't need to take him off the field. In the case with N'Kobe, they want him to be TJ, never leave the field. But that deals with durability, and we'll see from that. But, you want 2 guys. And that was part of the success of the Eagles. Everybody stayed healthy. So many guys stayed healthy and played the entire season. That's rare. So,
and the key guys from this year's Eagle teams all stayed healthy last night because they didn't play.
Yeah.
But a whole bunch of other guys did, and we're going to have to deal with those injuries. John will get some more info for you over the entire process next week, joint practice, final exhibition game, as we head to the start of the season. J-Mac, I'll see you next week. All right, brother?
All right. Thanks, Jody. Appreciate it.
Coming back here next, Birds 365. Johnny Mack and Xander K will wrap up this week here on Birds 365. Stay right there.